Hello, reader. So this is idea number 14. So we're now over halfway through these videos. If you're clinging on to watch them, no matter what, then your viewing displeasure is now over halfway through. So that's presumably a positive. Right. Well, we're going to pure tech this evening, and this one. Yeah, I mean, I like all my ideas, but I like this idea, and I wrote about it across four different articles. So I'll chat through these. I mean, there are some similarities between the articles. I've um, kind of put my evaluation model into each one, but let's walk through why I included it. So. Um, I guess the first thing that's noticeable is that it's trading not much above cash, which which was the first thing to note about it, and it's had some clinical success last year with the sale of Cobenfy, which is its schizophrenia drug, and the way that worked was they only owned a small percentage of the company Karuna that they but the agreement it had with Karuna was that there was then royalties and um, payments that were outside of its equity ownership. So it's quite an interesting business model where PureTech are kind of taking positions that in and of themselves are not necessarily um, worth vast amounts of money, but it offsets the development risk. They're only having to pay, a small percentage of contribution into those companies, and also that they also then have the upside from the fact that there'll be a royalty agreement and a use of technology. So there's kind of a disproportionate upside essentially, which I really like. So we have what's called the wholly owned portfolio. So this is where they're bearing the entire cost of development, and then you've got the what's called the founded entities, and these are where um, they just hold these partial positions. And I say small positions. I mean, some of them are not small. There's some here that are double digits, but for example, that one's obviously a smaller holding, so it does vary. It does vary. So where should we start? I think probably to talk around its sale of the what's now called Cobenfy. So um, this is an example article in Nature magazine, I think it was, where the mental health experts, psychologists, and so on are calling it a revolutionary drug. So it's got US approval, hasn't yet got approval in the UK or in Europe, but that's obviously that'll be next along the list. So it's the sequence of events was that it started life as the company was Karuna. They had a drug called CAR-XT that's now been renamed Cobenfy. It's been approved by the FDA in the US. So that is why it had 100 million up front, it had 29 million follow up, and then there's further commercial milestones. Okay, so essentially commercial milestones being, things like, we've sold this many of it, different, and presumably there'll be a commercial milestone for UK approval, EU approval, and so on. So I, I don't think we know exactly what these commercial milestones are, but the idea is that I believe that there's a reasonable chance that they can get to them. And just to complicate it even further, um, the 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 milestones were sold to a royalty company. So there's um, yeah, there's basically a sort of slightly hands-free, so with Bristol Myers. But to then further complicate it, there's then also an agreement with Bristol Myers Squibb, the owner of Coben Phi, that any sales above 2 billion a year then result in a royalty. So we've also got a further upside of 2% if sales exceed 2 billion. Now, schizophrenia drugs market, and this is the US drugs market, was 4.8 billion back in 2023. So those are the latest numbers. It's forecast to grow, so forecast to double by 2030. So, for example, if it can, the revolutionary drug, if it can hit 5 billion, that would bring in 60 million per year, or 47 million pounds, $60 million, 47 million pounds per year to PureTech. Hasn't happened yet, but it only just got FDA approval 3 months ago. There is in here, there is a estimate from Bloomberg as to what the sales are going to be. Let me see if I can find the jolly thing, which is here. So Bloomberg estimate that it's not going to happen immediately. It'll take time for sales of Coben Phi to grow, but from 2027 beyond, for sort of 7-8 years following 2027, sorry, beg your pardon, from 2029, according to Bloomberg, that so in 4 years' time, that it'll exceed 2 billion, and that there'll be a 2% royalty from 2029. So there's a future upside according to these guys, but ultimately, this is an estimate, and I think you can take a view on it, can't you? That sales could be higher, could be higher. There are sort of statistics like this, that schizophrenia costs the US 170 billion a year. So spending 5 billion a year on something that's costing you 170 billion, you can take a view on that, can't you? So yeah, and it's just, incredible that 1 in 300 are affected by the disease. That's and potentially estimates are as high as 1.6%. I just think that's just, it blows my mind that there could be that many people with suffering from schizophrenia. It's just wow. You just, I don't know, perhaps wouldn't expect those numbers to be as high as this neuroscientist speaks to. But anyway, whatever it is, that's just part of the story. That's just part of the story. So I talk about, there's a really good historical batting average and I've taken this from their presentation deck. So I don't know what that 80% specifically is based upon, but they so the acquisition was 14 billion. 2.3% equity of Karuna was owned by PureTech, so it was on the books at 292 million. So sorry, it was on the books at 280 million. Sorry, they received 292, so it was a small gain to what it was valued on the books. But of course, that small gain. I mean, first of all, it was turned into cash is the first thing, but of course, on top of the um, the acquisition cost, the 14 billion, uh, was then also the royalties and also the milestone payment. So there's kind of more upside than this immediate gain would suggest. So it's some of that cash was used to reduce shares, to do a buyback. So there was $100 million of shares bought back, so 31 million shares bought back, and so that's kind of one part to this business. The founder entities, I mean, they're on the books at very little. You can see here, 29.2 million pounds at the end of last year. And then there was a 25.2 million follow on. So we're talking like just over 50 million. And I show this on. Let's just grab this. I show this on here, where the book value of these entities, and you can see this one is the largest of them. The book value is um, quite modest, So yeah, overall estimated net assets 290 million. And then there's quite a lot of cash on the balance sheet as well. So it's interesting because when I started looking at the accounts, I mean, what I quickly realised was that, and it says it here, the development costs are just basically just expensed to the profit and loss in accordance with the IAS 38. They're only capitalized if they can be measured reliably, and if the product or process is technically and commercially feasible. In other words, if you've got something like Karuna, that you've got that reasonable expectation that it's going to commercialize, that you're talking to Bristol Myers Squibb, it's at that point you can put it on the books. Until then, you can't. So all of this development is essentially being expensed, whereas perhaps in another business, let me just close that tab down. In another business, you would tend to capitalize those kinds of things. I mean, just it's for whatever reason, this rule IAS 38 prevents them from doing that. So yeah, when you look at the balance sheet looks a lot weaker than it otherwise would do if they were able to capitalize essentially the investments that they are making. So I kind of did a little bit of maths to kind of say, well, what if they did capitalize it? What would it then look like? And it was interesting because if you took the 313 million that had been expensed that related to research and development, so I only took research and development, not admin costs, or it's sort of just the R&D. And if you think, I mean, I'm not saying that's what the accounts say, because it isn't. The accounts say no, it was expensed, and that's the facts because of IAS 38. But if you just look at this from an investor point of view, where you say, well, okay, what if I do treat it as an investment, as because ultimately, if the drug fails and the whole thing is a non-starter, then fine, write it off. Write it off and say, yeah, that's a loss, because at that point it is a loss. If it's not going to go anywhere, then yeah, fair enough. But until you do know that it is that, then one way of valuing this would be to say, well, capitalize it until you know either way. Okay, so I'm just saying that's a way to look at this, and if you do, then since 2021, PureTech have made on average 50 million a year, and that's 50 million a year on a market cap of 360 million. So it's a price earnings of about 7.2, say. So And I say PE of 8 because at the time the market cap was 400 when I wrote this article. So it's come down in price quite a bit, by about 10-15%. Cheaper than other pharma companies. I'm not saying they are of the same league as GSK. Obviously, they're a lot smaller than GSK, a lot smaller than Hikma. These are both FTSE 100s, but just to kind of give you a a point of reference, because these are bigger than. I mean, they're not. They were FTSE 250 at one point. They're not now. They've dropped out of the 250. But I mean, they're kind of borderline. You know, borderline will rejoin the FTSE 250 potentially at some point in the future. So comparing them to the likes of GSK, Hikma, I mean, those both are much larger, but it's not a wholly unfair comparison. So I want to move on to the other things that they're doing and the other things they're up to. So this LYT 100 is a big part of what they're spending R&D on. So this is all to do with something called idiopathic fibrosis, IPF, and I write about it in this article here. Um, so, so this is the perfenadone. So, perfenadone is the drug that it already exists. It's already being prescribed. It's an existing drug. It's been FDA approved. It's done all of its phased trials and so on. And uh, IPF is a debilitating, ultimately fatal lung disease. Scars your lungs, uh, difficulty breathing, decrease the amount of oxygen to your lungs. Pretty nasty stuff. Once you've got it, it basically is like your lungs are sort of declining. Typically, you can expect to live 2 or 3 years on average after you're diagnosed. Uh, Median survival after diagnosis is 2 to 3 years. Um, you also have something called exacerbations that if you have what's called an exacerbation, so like an episode, then it can kill you. It's as simple as that. So and about 5 or 10% of IPF patients experience an exacerbation during a year. So it's kind of you could call it a ticking time bomb. So this existing pirfenidone, and there's 2 treatments out there. Pirfenidone is one of the 2. You can see here, it's 3 million people worldwide, so it's quite a lot of people, and it's generally older people, generally men, not women. Uh, there's kind of quite a large market. So the the market size value is I did some research on this, so it's 16 to 17 billion. Looking, potentially it's going to grow from 16 to 27 billion by in the next few years. So it's growing, and they say it's pollution, smoking, all the usual things that cause you to have this. So as I say, pirfenidone is one of the 2 treatments. I mean, this one, antacid, that's kind of more your almost like over the counter stuff, as far as I understand it. Whereas these 2 are actual drugs that treat IPF. So what PureTech have done is they've taken this, okay, and basically created dupirfenidone, which is basically taking their own technology to try and increase the tolerability of this drug. So in other words, the drug, the efficacy, the effectiveness, and the the effectiveness and the safety of the drug is no different. But what they're doing is they're changing the nature of it. It's I think I do talk about what they do in this. So it is let's have a look. It's basically an approach where they are looking to make it. Sorry, I'm trying to give you the science behind it if I can, but maybe I can't. I do talk about it where yeah, I mean, it's essentially the problem with pirfenidone is that the side effects. So it makes you feel very sick. It makes you, sort of, you can see here that, people don't stick with pirfenidone. They stop taking it, or they don't take it regularly because you've got, like, on one hand, problems with your lungs. Then on the other hand, you've got the sort of quality of life aspect, that it makes you feel sick and various things. So anyway, they've done a phase 1, they're now doing a phase 2. So what the phase 2 did was it basically did top trumps versus pirfenidone versus dupirfenidone, so the normal treatment versus their treatment, and it was double blind, and all the usual things to kind of say, like, uh, let's sort of uh, see if we can get a valid clinical result. And what they found was that the treatment was very effective, that it appeared to eliminate the decline to the top end of normal. So people's lung function as they get older does decline naturally. That even if you don't have IPF, you're you're not going to be as fit as you were when you were younger. That's just scientific. That's life. But what LYT 100 appeared to do was to reduce the reduction to the top end of normal. Okay, so top end of normal. So normal is 15 to 25 and milliliters, and they were at 21.5. So they were sort of, more or less at the top end of normal, not quite at the top end, but and then yeah, decline when. So they tried two things. They tried it at a high dosage, and then they tried it as a reduced dosage, and then they also did it as a monotherapy, and did it as so what they found was that it had a 80.9 favorable tolerability. So not 100%. There's still people that are going to feel sick and have stomach upsets and all the rest of it. So it's not perfect, but it is a lot better than the normal. I mean, that's a big difference of numbers. That's like, twice as many well, no, yeah, only half of the normal intolerable ones are intolerable under the phase 2, so 80 versus 50, more or less. So fewer symptoms. You can see the symptoms there: diarrhea, dyspepsia, which I think is, I'm not going to guess, nausea, constipation, vomiting. So vomiting halved, nausea reduced. So all very, very positive. It's now on to phase 3 for LYT 100. I mean, it's got through phase 2, so that was a huge. I mean, I kind of, when this came out a few weeks ago, I kind of expected to see some sort of, massive movement. I thought, oh wow, gosh, hold on to your seats, because it's now through phase 2 and it's going to be going to phase 3. Fantastic. So you can see here. Little did I know that it was going to go the other way. Not sure quite why. I have no idea why it should have plummeted following a successful phase 2. Doesn't really make sense, but hey ho. So that's basically what's happened. So I sort of talk about it here: 50% reduction in the gastrointestinal tolerability in a head-to-head study, um, and there's some graphs there that kind of give you some. That's the normal pirfenidone, that's the LYT, that's the dosage level, that's the improved anti-inflammatory and anti-fibrotic activity. So it's reduction in plasma concentrations. Again, this is all quite technical, but the large improvement that we see there of response, the way the body is responding to the medication. So, I mean, the theory behind this, and I'm just taking this from the presentation deck, the theory behind this was that it can potentially, if you're um, uh, demonstrating better safety levels, you can stay on the drug longer, uh, uh, to improve the efficacy of it. Um, the better efficacy would be that you then retain more lung function, and it's a better outcome for the patient. So um, yeah, all very, 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 very positive. I mean, Liberum, the broker, said when the phase two trial, if the phase two trial is successful, this should, in their opinion, add 320 million or £1.25 to the share price. It didn't. So what should be, according to Liberum, sort of £3.30 has dropped to £1.50. But and that was a risked valuation that they gave in their assessment. So yeah, look, it's it is what it is, but it's interesting because that's why I didn't hesitate to include it in my ideas, because clearly the market hasn't kind of woken up to the idea that LYT 100 has been successful. I mean, or is assuming that phase three will fail, or something of that nature. Um, LYT 100 is only one of its own in-house drugs. It's also got 200. So 200 is as you see here, it's a treatment for metastatic solid tumors, poor survival rates, AML, so it's acute myeloid leukemia, where at the moment, over half of all people that get this, it's basically game over, that and what this again, it's early days, it's phase one. Uh, was that they sort of showed that they could get a very strong T cell response from patients in the phase one, and also that it was generally safe, tolerable. Um, you know, two, Nearly two-thirds of patients getting stable disease or better. Um, you know, Compared to those that have initial treatments and relapse, I mean, in combination 80% or better. So hence we saying that again, it looks, I mean, it's early days. It was just based upon, this phase one was based upon a very, very small number of patients. So next thing is to move to a phase two with this. But I mean, certainly these response levels look very positive to me. So um, some good results there as well. Uh, LYT 300 is so this is back to mental health medicines. That again, this has done a phase two and it achieved its primary endpoint. There's going to be more work going on in 2025. So hopefully what you're starting to see is the reason that I sort of said, well, hang on a minute, why is all of this R&D going straight to the loss, the profit and loss, i.e. to the loss, when like that's a successful phase two, that's a successful phase one, that's a successful phase two. It's not as though there's anything in these results that are saying like these are not going to work. Like, we've tested it, like the patients didn't tolerate it, or it wasn't safe, or this happened or that happened. Quite the opposite. Like, to my mind, that IAS 38 rule that prevents them from capitalizing the R&D is bonkers, is my humble opinion. And I'm obviously, none of this is investment advice. It's just me pontificating on what why I chose this as an idea. Um, and I'm not finished. Sorry, where are we? 30 minutes in, so you're probably, so some people will probably be getting a little bit bored now, but let's carry on. For those of you that are genuinely interested in sort of understanding the reason I chose this idea, LYT 310 is then a CBD. So see that there's a lot of small shares that don't have much cash that kind of do different things with CBD, and it's got a bit of a reputation. I think anyway. I've not got any investments into any of the CBD type stuff. I've kind of steered clear of it because it looked very kind of, I don't know. I just didn't feel. Whereas with this, I mean, obviously these guys are quite, they're sort of borderline FTSE 250. They've just delivered a blockbuster. They've delivered phase one, phase two, success. So if they can work on a CBD treatment and I think they can do something with it, to me, it's a very different to some sort of micro cap, nano cap share that is trying to sort of do something with a few million quid. I mean, you've got to have a few 100 million quid to kind of do things properly. So again, it's trying to work on it. There's hopefully starting to see a theme to this, that these guys are trying to work on improving safety and the side effects with current treatments. And this is a key phrase: reducing GI and liver exposure, to scale the product so it's oral administration, uh, broad range of treatment areas. So this liver exposure is a really key part to the technology that sits behind PureTech, that is hidden value. That they've got a proprietary platform called Glyph, and this bypasses the liver. Now, I don't know if you know this, but your liver, if you go out and get madly drunk and wake up the next morning and you sort of have a pain, like inside your left hand side, maybe some back pain, what feels like back pain, that could just be your liver telling you, like, thanks a lot, mate, you've basically given me a good hammering, because your liver removes toxins, and if you drink like a fish, then your liver eventually gives up. There was that very famous footballer, wasn't there, that had to have a liver transplant. That your liver is sort of, you know, getting rid of toxins in your body. But the problem with getting rid of toxins in your body is that if you introduce medicines into your body, your liver will also try and get rid of that, because it sees it as a toxin in your body when it perhaps isn't. So one of the problems with taking medicines is that your liver gets in the way of that medicine. It's trying to tackle that medicine, for want of a better word. So what PureTech do, they've got this technology where they bypass the liver and they absorb into the lymphatic system. So your lymphs. So this is a sort of a way to uh, hepato. Sorry, I haven't practiced this. I should have probably practiced it. Hepatotoxicity is toxicity of your liver. So one of the problems can be that your liver can interact with drugs. Is the other thing, that some medicines fail not because they don't work, but because they don't work with your liver. So if you can avoid your liver and basically absorb the dosage, the medicine, a different way, which is what PureTech offer, this is a way that it can unlock a whole range of medicines. Now, obviously, some of those in-house ones, the ones where they are looking to reduce side effects and improve safety, a lot of that is just down to the fact that they're using the glyph technology. But it's also true that technologies like these guys, okay, so I call it repeating the formula, that these are using glyph as well, okay? So enhance oral bioavailability, avoid first pass mortality, reduce liver enzyme elevations and hepatotoxicity. There we go, got it all this first time then. That again, the thing you've got to realize here is A, they're the only ones that can do this or that do this. B, for these founded entities, if they come up with a blockbuster drug, okay, that there is then a separate royalty stream for using the glyph technology. So, not only do they own 36% on a diluted basis. This was after a fund round. And again, this happened, sorry, this article here, funding round at Seaport, October the 22nd. You'll sort of see why so October the 22nd, this funding round happened here. So it was, what was it, £1.55, and then it went up 10%. So on the basis £1.55 would put it at about 380. So it went up to about 420 million. Okay, so it went up by 40 million on the basis. So this funding round, 225 million to develop the seaport, which reduced the ownership from 61.5, I think it was, to 36.7. But the 32 million valuation previously, so they owned 61%, but it was only worth 32 million. The valuation grew to 119 million. And that is a 73 million gain. So 73 million gain is basically, if we do 1.24 today's exchange rate, is a 59 million gain. So they gained 59 million and the shares went up 40 million. So at the time I thought, they haven't gone up by even as much as the funding round, which, and we're only talking of a valuation of a shareholding, a shareholding in Seaport. But again, I thought, well, the market hasn't understood this because, these guys, so, the funding round was, Goldman, T Rowe, CPP. So these are serious players. These are not sort of, top tier investors, General Atlantic and so on, Third Rock. So these are all kind of serious players. And well, what's Seaport doing with their 225 million funding round? Well, the answer to that is they are working on a series of neuropsychiatric medicines. Now, my question to you would be, where have you heard of neuropsychiatric medicines before? And of course, the answer, hopefully, is you say, oh, well, yeah, there was a 14 billion sale to Bristol Myers Squibb of a revolutionary drug for schizophrenia. So Seaport is kind of doing the same thing, but not specifically for schizophrenia. They're working on. Oh, there we go. I did sort of talk about it at the time. So did the market notice on the day it happened? It took about a week for that 40 million to go up. And of course it's gone back down. So it's gone back down to, what is it, 360 million. because they got a 59 million pound uplift to see, via its Seaport funding round, and it got a phase 2 success from LYT 100, and that's the reason that it should be on the same price as it was back in October. Go figure. Oh, and 29 million from Bristol Myers for the FDA approval. Sorry, from Royalty Pharma for the FDA approval. So 3 pieces of good news, 0 impact to the share price. Okay, so let's carry on with Seaport. So Seaport are going to advance its clinical stage pipeline, first and best in class, da-di-da-di-da. I mean, we're very excited to partner with the team at Seaport, said General Atlantic. So this is one of the investors. We're very impressed. We're impressed with the team's outstanding clinical track record, as well as the Glyph platform, an innovative pipeline. The trial design demonstrates deep neuropsychiatric expertise around the table, unique advantages, the oral bioavailability, the first pass metabolism, reduce, so it's all of that stuff that that we've seen successful, has been the success for Cobenfy. And in fact, Cobenfy was another example where it was based upon another drug that wasn't successful. They used the Glyph platform, and then it was. So this is a tried and tested formula that is rinsing and repeating. And yeah, I'm just saying it as I see it. I don't, definitively know that this is going to work on a rinse and repeat basis, because obviously medicine and phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, development of drugs is inherently risky. So it's not like a simple bish bash bosh to this. But are the odds in your favor on this? I mean, I'd like to think my odds are in favor on this, because these guys have got a phase 2 study, this SPT 300. So there's lots and lots of letters and numbers being thrown at you in this video. So there's a lot to take in, and obviously, hopefully, speaking about this rather than just reading my articles, I don't know, maybe it bores you to death, and maybe it's useful and it sort of brings it to life a little bit. Hopefully the latter. If not, just stop watching. You don't need to carry on. We're up to 42 minutes, and don't put yourself through any more. It's Friday night. Just go and do something more interesting instead. I don't know. It's entirely up to you. But anyway, joking aside. So look, the yeah, I guess I sort of obviously talk about it here. So look, they've got several programs. I mean, the SP T300 is one of them. So this is a phase 2 for major depressive disorder, with or without anxious distress, that has the potential to be registration enabling. I'm not entirely sure what registration enabling means, but allopregnanolone is an endogenous neurosteroid with clinically validated rapid antidepressant and anxiolytic activity. And SPT 300 retains this activity in an oral form. So in other words, once again, we're dealing with something that we know works, this allopregnanolone. Try saying that after a few. Not only will your liver be complaining to you, but you will not be pronouncing that correctly. I can guarantee it. Anyway, I have been handed some champagne in a very unchampagne glass, which I'm not going to drink because I won't pronounce things. Certainly won't pronounce things properly, even if I can, even if I can before said beverage. Anyway, so look, to my mind, it's a rinse and repeat. We've got a tolerability problem that we can solve, and it's not the only one. They've also got this program. So this is a phase one study, and this is generalized anxiety disorder. Now, I think this is interesting because there's a lot of people that have GAD. Like GAD is, and again, it's using glyph. GAD is that sort of like where you get those medicines that if you've got sort of panic attacks, and that's what GAD is, and that's kind of the much more, or at least that's my perception, it's the much more common form of mental illness, is that sort of milder, you're not seeing little green men, but you're kind of suffering panic attacks, that kind of thing. So that program could be massive. Obviously, it's earlier stage, and then we've got SPT 348. So again, it's a non-hallucinogenic neuroplastogen in the development of mood and other neuropsychiatric disorders. Again, glyph. Um, and then beyond these three, there's multiple discovery and preclinical. So other stuff in the pipeline. So uh, I guess there's so many shots on goal with this thing. Um, we haven't really talked about but the Seaport and these three that we've just been chatting through. I mean, that's just one part of it. The PureTech, this one we've talked about, but we've got and Karuna is the one that's been acquired. So we've talked about that one, and that one. And then this, I mean, this is a listed company, VOR. They've got a phase one, two phase ones, and there's an update coming from those. There's this one as a phase three for C. difficile. So again, C. difficile is massive. Let's see if we can find difficile. So so in terms of, again, I'm sort of just pulled, rather than trying to sort of work out, come up with my own sort of, oh, this is what I think it's worth. What I've just done in this is take the target price that the broker came up with to sort of say, well, look, this is, TP is target price 162 million, and this is to modulate the microbiome. So C. difficile being a kind of infection in your gut, isn't it? It's a form of yeah, it's like a nasty like MRSA type thing, isn't it? That like a sort of bacterial infection is probably the words I'm looking to say. So again, fast track designation, phase three study. I mean, that again, it's a massive shot on goal, and they own a third of it. PureTech own a third of it. This one, hydrogels for improving capsule absorption. I mean, who knows? I mean, that one obviously is very small, but if there's another way that they can improve their glyph technology, that's all for the good, because we've seen how they can then sort of use that across multiple programs. So anything like that kind of sparks my interest, and they own pretty much all of it. Then so we've also talked about VOR, and then finally this one. So again, sort of quite a smaller valuation, but voice-driven AI platform for health monitoring. So again, it's sort of another idea that's floating around. So look, bringing it all together. If I just put my valuation back on the screen. So I mean, what I did was I sort of, and I've updated this with today's share price, so that you can sort of see it. That the NAV back in last proper accounts is this 306 million. Okay, um, this is the news flow since the last accounts. So we know that there was a funding round, and that was I've sort of said 58.9 at today's exchange rate, but I think I used 1.27. There we go. I use 1.27. So if I change that for today's exchange rate, then there's our 58.8 million pounds, which is 24.6p. So I mean, the market cap, you can buy this share for £1.50, 1.8. Okay, you can buy it for £1.50, 1.8. So I think I'm just picking that up from. Anyway, you get that. So like if we say, well, look, that's happened. That's happened. That was the 28 million milestone payment, and I've kind of said, well, based upon prior R&D and admin costs, there's normally 53.5 million. So I'm taking a 53.5 million chunk off the valuation. So that gets me, I mean, if you don't do that, then obviously it gets to £1.46, compared to £1.51. So if you don't include the last 6 months of costs, then it's pretty much the share price is backed almost 100% by its NAV. But look, I've chucked it off to get to £1.23.6. I've then said, well, look, I'm going to assume this Karuna is the well, I mean, we can call it Karuna or we can call it Coben Fi. So future milestone payments. I mean, that's based upon the getting the full 400, which I'm assuming will happen. I mean, the feedback about the way, I think it was the American Journal of Psychiatry said, oh, this is a revolutionary drug and blah blah blah. So look, there's nothing to my mind to suggest that won't happen. So if you factor that in, you get straight away to £2.81. What I've also done is I've said, well, like these are the valuations of the founded entities. So this is kind of using the target prices, the base prices gets you to a net of 47 million, which adds another 20p. So then you get to about £3, and that 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 is. I don't think that's the upside valuation at all. I think that's the low valuation. So kind of you kind of get to £3. And I suppose if you said, well, actually, I'm not going to include the milestone payments, if you sort of said, well, actually, I'm just going to I'm going to nullify that, then even that you're sort of getting to kind of well, not quite to £1.51, but you're getting to about £1.45. So it it kind of feels like it's at about half price before you factor in any kind of further success. And the further success, I mean, I've kind of said here that upsides could be the LYT, and I've only sort of considered £1.25. I mean, which is the Liberum assessment. I've sort of said, well, let's factor that in. I've factored in this idea that that it would get I've just based it on 2.5 million of sales for 15 years. So I've kind of, that comes back at about 50p a share. I've sort of said, well, I don't know where it's going to come from precisely, but Glyph, I mean, easily, like to my mind, any day of the week, it's that's worth 100 million, and that's pretty conservative in my opinion, because you've got, numerous or numerous shots at goal where any one of those could deliver many times 100 million. So, like, if I sort of flogged it in the open market, could I get 100 million for it? Any day of the week, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, the General Atlantic people, for example, were raving about it. And so, again, I don't think I'm pushing the boat out when I say that PureTech is worth £5.17 today before any kind of further news flow. And if you agree with that, then it's so I've kind of said it here, that if you agree with that, then that 517 equals 1.3 billion, which puts it at a 72% discount, which sounds astronomically high. And obviously, if you just consider it to be on that £3, I think that's where we get 40% discount, if I'm not mistaken. Which is still well, it's probably more like 45, something like that, with it being or maybe even sort of 49. So it feels vastly undervalued, and I can't see why. The only thing I can think is that people are seeing the R&D costs, and they're seeing the apparent lack of profit and the lack of cash flow as the reason for not kind of valuing this share. But when you sort of look at it from the point of view of ignoring IAS 38, which at the end of the day is an accounting standard that only allows you to capitalize things under very specific circumstances. And if you say, well, okay, appreciated, but I'm going to do it anyway to sort of work out whether this is, uh, and based on the news for hopefully what I've shown you today is that it feels like it's the right thing to do. And when you do it, then it just transforms your understanding of this share. Now, does it have risk? Yes. Is the, I suppose, what's the complete downside, I suppose, on the basis that, if Cobenfy is a complete flop, somehow, the American Journal of Psychiatry just got it wrong. Bristol Myers, that spent $14 billion, got it wrong. Royalty Pharma, that backed it and sort of has sort of agreed milestones, got it wrong. Bloomberg got it wrong. Like, General Atlantic, that have sunk 225 into another seaport that uses the same technology, has got it wrong. Like, I mean, yes, it's possible that this won't work out and it'll flop, but I just don't know. I kind of look at it and think, well, it feels like you've got a pretty good chance with this one. So, yeah, that's why I've included it in the Oak Bloke 25 for 25. But it is just my opinion. This isn't investment advice. I hope this video has been useful to explain my thinking. As I say, I mean, there's so much to cover in this that you can't, it's quite difficult to record a video to kind of give you a really snappy sort of 5 minute something on it. You've got to kind of spend the time. So I've spent an hour, and if that's been boring, then I do apologize. But for those of you that are genuinely interested, then hopefully that's been an hour's well spent of your lives. But that's all from me, all from the Oak Bloke. Have a good weekend, and cheerio for now.